I'm smacking. What up, y'all? Hey, world. The Mossi Warrior Clan is back. We back. All right, so give me a second. I need to like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. I see we got some people in here. The description of the show has been updated. So if you want to click on the description, you can kind of understand why we're here. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all. So we're going to do some literature review. It's a review of Science's Eyes on Africa regarding evolution through literature review. I don't know if many of you guys are aware, but there's a huge reason why there's a major focus on Africa in the scientific field of study. Whatever lane that you choose, the eyes is there. So for the listening audience, I'm gonna put this first article in the chat, and then there will be other articles that develop from this article in the chat, right? So I'm gonna start with this one article, and then I'm gonna go through some other areas. But if you're listening to what I'm saying, then you're going to understand that with the source that I'm about to provide you is going to branch off into other lanes. All right. So I see that we kind of filling up. So I'm trying to give people some time, but I'm gonna drop the source in the chat. And yeah, I don't know if Brick gonna be here or not for this. Okay. Are we not gonna drop the source? Hold on, y'all. Let me put the first source, and then we'll build outwards from there. So I know it's been a real busy day today, man. Kofi was live, Uncle's live. Oh, that's why y'all can't get the article. It's too long in character. So let me see if I can shorten it up. Kind of get it, because I do want to make sure that y'all get it. Maybe I should just, because of how long it is, maybe I should put it in the description. And if I put it in the description, then y'all can grab it from the description. Or let me see if I shorten it up, if it'll pull through. All right, y'all gonna ride with me anyway, man. But let me put this in the description right now. I see we filling up, piling up. All right, so in the description is the source. If you want to refresh your YouTube page and come back, you can go into the description box and grab that source, because that's what we're gonna start with, and then we're gonna kind of go everywhere else. Now I won't have my eyes on the chat, but hopefully everybody cool. Danny nuts. Conjures marathon. Yo, I'm eating some I shouldn't be eating. whatever. Everybody ain't perfect. I'm eating some sour shell shock now and laters. The chewable kind. They chewy bites. Them things bussin'. I haven't had candy in a while, but these pretty good. All right. Let me click this off. Share my screen. And let's rock out a little bit. All right, let me know. We should be good on the screen share. Let me move this icon up top down below. All right, there we go. Okay, so I was just online, just surfing through some stuff earlier today and this morning rather. And this article came out from thescientist.com. It's an older article from April 10th, 2019. So later this past year. And I'm gonna get us all the way up to a recently article, which is here. But let's take a look at the findings because the title is kind of interesting, right? It says new species of human, Homo luzonensis, identified in the Philippines. All right, so a new species of human. Now, this is all in the lane of Untitled, right? This is what he does. Him and the Mossi are very avid in this field of study. They are proponents of it. They both have written material on the said subject. Mossi has a book that he's about to publish. Actually, 2020, you can expect a lot of written material from the Amara Squad. I think Sanjetti even may have some work or something like that coming in 2020. I know Jawa does. Asar has 2 or 3 works, I think, coming 2020. Nahisi got works. Got work. And it's going to be a pretty booked up year for the Amara Squad again with their literature and their information. So stay tuned to that. But anyway, it says 13 hominid bones found in the cave are so unique that archaeologists have determined they stem from a distinct hominid species, although other questions whether the researchers have enough evidence. So in 2007, an archaeologist by the name of Armand Salvador Majerez found a curious bone buried in the Callao cave in the Philippine island of Luzon. Shortly after he and his colleagues concluded it was a third metastasaur from a human that lived some 67,000 years ago. Now, together with other findings, it demonstrated that humans could cross the open ocean and reach isolated islands very early on in our history. But whether that bone belonged to Homo sapiens or another species of our genius was a mystery. Majerez of the University of the Philippines and his colleagues have since discovered 12 additional bones and teeth from the same site. Their analysis has revealed that the remains are unlike any other hominid fossils known and likely represent a distinct species of the Homo genus. The researchers named it Homo luzonensis. They reported on April 10th in the Journal of Nature. All right, so stop right there. We go here, and then we should pull up the Journal of Nature's article on the finding. I think I got the wrong one right here. Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, earliest known hominid activity in the Philippines by 709,000 years ago. What's this one? This one will take you to the Journal of Human Evolution as well, volume. This is a 2010 edition, which if you clicked on an earlier blue link, it would take you here to this one. So when I'm actually reading this scientific article, because remember, I am doing a literature review, so I'm just trying to show y'all my process. So initially, when I started reading this article, I clicked here on concluded because I wanted to see what was concluded before I went any further into the article. When I went to concluded, it took me to this article, which was new evidence for 67,000-year-old presence at the Kala Cave Luzon in the Philippines. So then I read the abstract. It's not long. We can go over it, right? So it says documentation of early human migrations through islands, Southeast Asia, and Wallace en route to Australia has always been problematic due to the lack of well-dated human skeleton remains. The best known modern humans are from Naya Cave in the Borneo and from the Taboon Cave of the island of Palawan, Southwest Philippines. Notice that they said human skeleton remains, and then they went back and found remains in two different caves, right? If you go back to South Africa and you deal with Brother Ben's video where he goes and he talks about evolution and the process of the human fossil remains in South Africa in the caves and so on and so forth, they find remains there as well. They found a lot of evidence, right? Okay. Because it looks like people at the time wasn't building homes, so they were seeking shelter in what we call today as caves. Now, the discovery of Homo florensis, or however you say that name, on the island of Flores in eastern Indonesia has also highlighted the possibilities of identifying new hominid species on an island in the region. Here we report the discovery of human third metatessera from Kaleo Cave in northern Luzon. Now, direct dating of the specimen using the U-series ablations has provided a minimal age estimate of 66.7 plus 1 Ka, making it the oldest known human fossils in the Philippines. Now, its morphological features, as well as size and shape characteristics, indicate that the Kaleo metatessera definitely belongs to the genus Homo. Now, anybody stuck on Homo, you can pull up the taxonomy thing, or you can go to Jawo's video on Amara Squad where he goes in the taxonomy, and it gives you a breakdown of the different type of homos and all the other things on that. All right, so moving on. Morphometric analysis of the Kaleo metatessera indicates that it has a glacial structure close to the observed in other small-body Homo sapiens. Interestingly, the Kaleo metatessera also falls within the morphological and size ranges of Homo habilis and Homo florensis. Identifying whether the metatessera represents the earliest record of Homo sapiens so far recorded anywhere east of Wallace's line requires further archaeological research, but its presence on the isolated island of Luzon over 65,000 years ago further demonstrate the abilities of humans to make open ocean crossings in the Lake Pleasanton. You can look up that area. So after reading that article, I went back to the article and I read the second paragraph. Then I pulled up the Nature article, right? So I went here, and now I'm here at this article. Might be boring, people. All right, so I get to this article, and this is the actual Journal of Nature's, the original article where it was published at. Remember on Garfield's channel, we dealt with how research is done or sites are sourced and which sites are highly credentialed. The Journal of Nature is a highly credentialed site. So it's always one of the most sourced or referenced journals in all of the scientific field. This is one of the reasons why I keep telling you to spend $200 to become a member. Now, in this abstract, it says over 60 years ago, Stone tools and remains of the megafauna were discovered on the Southeast Asian islands of Flores, Sulawesi, and Luzon, and a Middle Pleistocene colonization by Homo erectus was initially proposed to have occurred on these islands. So here in the abstract article, it calls it Homo erectus. In the other article, they gave it a different name. Here we go, and it's going to be in this article. However, until the discovery of Homo florescensis in 2003, claims of the present archaic hominids, hominids on Wallacine Islands were hypothetical owing to the absence of its situ fossils and or stone artifacts that were excavated from well-documented stratigraphic contexts, or because secure numerical dating methods of these sites were lacking. As a consequence, these claims were generally treated with skepticism. Here we describe the results of a recent excavation at Kalinga and the Cagayan Valley of the northern Luzon in the Philippines that have yielded 57 stone tools associated with an almost complete disarticulated skeleton of Rhinoceros philippinus, which shows clear signs of butchery, together with other fossil fauna remains attributed to stegodon, Philippine brown deer, freshwater turtle, and monitor lizard. All finds originate from a clay-rich bone bed that was dated between 777 and 631,000 years ago using electron spin resonance methods that were applied to tooth enamel and fluvial quartz. Okay, excuse me. Anybody want to look that up, they can. But if you want to look up something, you need to look up this method that was used. This is the method. Electron spin resonance methods. We need to know what that is. And then how that was applied to tooth enamel and fluvial quartz. This evidence pushes back the proven period of colonization of the Philippines by hundreds of thousands of years. And furthermore, suggests that early overseas dispersal in the island Southeast Asia by pre-modern hominids took place several times during the early and middle Pleistocene stages. The Philippines, therefore, may have had a central role in southward movements into Wallacea, and not only as Pleistocene megafauna, but also as archaic hominids. All right, so there go the references for the above. Then there's some other stuff that probably goes on down there. So now I'm going back to this article. All right, and we stopped right here at this Nature article, and we took a look at the two articles that took us to where we were going. Now, it says the reason that we did what we just did, because we needed to review whatever the concluded efforts were in this article, and then we needed to understand what Nature, which was the source of the first article, the second mention, was actually stating, so that we could comprehend what was said or found in that one to better grasp what this paragraph actually states, and then what it was referencing for the April 10th article. Now it says, it's fantastic news. It's not every day you get to name a new species within a human family tree. The remarks from Michael Petraglia, a professor of human evolution and prehistory at the Max Planck Institute for Science of Human History, who wasn't involved in the study. The work is very strong, very robust, and they have convinced me that we're probably looking at a new species within our genus. Now, altogether, the team, a group of French and Australian researchers, as well as Majerus himself, found a partial femur, two-hand, phalanges, 2 feet phalanges, and 7 teeth from at least 3 individuals. They dated one of the molars to a minimum of 50,000 years, slightly younger than the metatarsal. They weren't able to extract any DNA from the fossils, making it impossible to conduct phylogenetic analysis. Instead, they based their conclusions on detailed examination of the remains using a range of techniques, including traditional measurements, micro CT scans, and 3D morphometric analysis. So again, these are the tools that we use to determine. Let's highlight these tools. The techniques, including traditional measurements of, and we'll leave it right there. Now, 2 premolar and 3 molar teeth prove especially useful because they stem from the same individual. The molars had modern features reminiscent of Homo sapiens and Asian Homo erectus teeth, but they were too small to have stemmed from Homo sapien individuals. The premolars, on the other hand, could have stemmed from Homo sapiens if one only considered their size. But these also had 2 or 3 roots, a characteristic regarded as primitive. These unique combination of characteristics were present in any known hominid fossils, explains Florent Detroit, a paleoanthropologist at the Museum of National d'Histoire Naturelle in Paris and a co-author of the new study. It says the hand and the foot phalanges puzzled the researchers as soon as some of them strikingly resembled those of an Australopithecus species, a hominid known from the African fossil record that lived up to 1.5 million years ago. We're dealing with Africa now. They're comparing it. We're in the Philippines and all of that. They did all this research and all this analysis and all these things. Now they're saying it's reminiscent of an Australopithecus species, a hominid known from the African fossil record that lived up to 1.5 million years ago. If we told people that we discovered them in Ethiopia in layers dated to 3 million years ago, everybody would agree with us that it's really Australopithecus. But to see much specimens in the Philippines from only 50,000 years ago is unexpected. The morphologies of Australopithecus hand and feet bones are thought to reflect varying degrees of climbing behavior or bipedalism, but it's not yet clear how Homo luzonensis may have moved, he adds. To Detroit, the findings suggest that isolations on islands can drive speciation in humans in the same way it does for other vertebrate species. I'm almost 100% sure that the unique combinations of features we are observing in Homo luzonensis is also due to the effects of insular endemism, he says. You want to look that word up, you can. Now, the Callao Cave, this is the cave above, y'all. Look at all them people there, right? You see how they got it all layered out over here, you know, where they got their letters so they can go down in the earth and figure out what's going on. They do that with all of these caves. Significant for their research. It says the Callao Cave fossils aren't the earliest evidence of humans on Luzon. In 2018, researchers found a set of stone tools beside the remains of a butchered rhinoceros just 20 kilometers away from the cave. They were estimated that these were around 709,000 years old. That would be enough time to evolve the unique characteristics the team observed in Homo luzonensis, Detroit says. But it's not clear if Homo luzonensis descended from these earlier hominids. So let's stop. There's this thing right here that says found. Let me make sure if this is the article that says found. All right, so a new small body hominid from the later Pleistocene of Flores. Nope, that ain't the one that says found. Let me pull it up. I thought I had it pulled up. All right, hold up. I read them backwards. All right, so yeah, we did get into that. All right, cool, no problem. All right, so I kind of messed up on one of these. I think it was this and this. I had them reverse. Right. So this one comes before this one. I ain't gonna go back, but y'all kind of get the gist of what I was doing with the article. So as I'm reading it, I'm clicking the blue area, right? The blue area is gonna take me to another article that I read, and then I come back to this article and conclude. So some researchers question whether the evidence is enough to warrant a new species designation. I think there's really interesting set of remains, but it's really a lower end of the amount of evidence that you would want to base new species on, said the professor who studies human origins at George Washington University and wasn't involved in the study. So he has no say in it. He wasn't involved in it. Neither was the other person. All right. So there could be other explanations for the unique combination of two features, he says. The group of individuals that reached Luzon was likely a random assortment of genotypes with inbreeding over time. Genetic drift could have pushed them to develop the unique characteristics that Detroit and his colleagues observed. So there's a possibility that the remains represent merely an unusual island population of individuals rather than a new species, Wood explains. It's also unclear what kind of hominid they descended from to begin with, he notes. Uh, Homo florescensis, an extinct hominid discovered on the islands in the Indonesian islands in 2003 and nicknamed the Hobbit for its small size, is thought to have descended from a primitive hominid. But for the hominid in Luzon, it's hard to tell whether that this is primitive looking, relatively modern hominid or an older hominid whose molars happen to have become like molars that you would have found in modern humans. So what did they discover? The hominid that looked like a hobbit, which is a new small body hominid from the later Pleistocene of Flores, Indonesia. All right. So they go to abstract again, kind of go through the abstract and we deal with that. But in this one, it gets a little bit further, describing the hominid that was found and giving us further example of that. So we need to, review, read over this particular material, right? So that we can understand exactly what these people were looking at in this island. All right. Now, he said, it goes on to say that the remains may not represent a distinct species is a possibility you certainly have to entertain, says Prochaglio. Now, but I think that they have enough variability in fossils to show that it is probable, it's probably is another species, he says. For him, the findings raise several interesting questions. Did Homo luzonensis interbreed with other hominids? What happened to them? Were they simply out-competed with Homo sapiens arrived later? The Philippines was never connected by a land bridge to the mainland. So it raises an immediate question as to how did they get there? Was it intentional or not? Some researchers have suggested that other island hominids, such as Homo florescens, arrived afloat some kind of raft or a rudimentary boat. Meanwhile, others argue that early hominids weren't clever enough for that, and that it's more likely they arrived by chance, for instance, by getting swept away on tangles of mangroves during a tsunami. Some modeling work has shown that it would be possible to establish independent human populations on an island through successive accidental arrivals, but the probability of happening is very low, Detroit notes. His team discovered of yet another island hominid, as well as other recovery and ancient stone tool on other islands such as Sulawesi, make him think it might not be purely accidental, but it's a lot of speculation, he adds. So they don't know how these things showed up anywhere. They just know that they showed up. I said things, my bad, but how these particular hominids showed up to where they were located at. So it's all speculation. Now, to answer these questions will take more digging, which is exactly what they're doing, what Detroit thinks we need in the region. Now, 15 years ago, researchers had a very simplistic narrative of human evolution in Asia. He notes Homo erectus migrated from Africa and settled there until they were replaced by Homo sapiens. Now, the situation is totally different, he says. It's clearly a much, much more complex picture of hominid evolution in Asia. So let's move forward. We're still at the scientists, and this is dealing with the Australopithecus Sediba, not likely human ancestor study. Now, I ain't gonna bore all of y'all today, but this article was written a month after the previous article was written about the findings in the Philippines. Says the fossil record for the ancient hominid Sediba is younger than that of the Homo, a highly unlikely scenario for direct lineage. Now, over the last decade, some paleontologists have proposed that a tree climbing bipedal species whose fossils was found in South Africa was an ancestor of humans. But a new analysis published yesterday, May 8th, in Science Advances finds that scenario to be highly unlikely, given that the only fossils of Australopithecus Sediba are 800,000 years younger than oldest Homo specimen. So if we click on the Science Advances, we should come to an article right here for the Science Advances. So we need to properly understand the Science Advance article before we assume that the title of the article is leading us one way or another. So there's an abstract, and I'm gonna just read the abstract because there's more to it than that. It says, understanding the emergence of the genus Homo is a pressing problem in the study of human origins. Australopithecus Sediba has recently been proposed as an ancestral species of Homo, although it postdates earliest Homo by 800,000 years. Here we use probability models to demonstrate the observing an ancestor's fossil horizon that is at least 800,000 years younger than the descendant fossil's horizon is unlikely, about 0.09% on average. We corroborate these results by searching the literature and finding that within pairs of purported hominid ancestor, descendant species is only one case did the first discovery fossils of the ancestor post-date that from the descendant. And the age difference between these fossils was much less than the difference observed between the Sediba and the earliest Homo. Together, these results suggest it is highly unlikely that a Sediba is an ancestral to Homo, and that the most viable candidate ancestral species remains is Australopithecus afarensis. So in the abstract, they tell us what they're doing, they provide their method, and then they give us a breakdown of their method on how they get to where they want to get. And if you want to get a little bit further than that, you can, but mainly they're going to be dealing with all South Africa in this. And then they get into Ethiopia. As you can see, they go on South Africa here. They get into Ethiopia here. And they'll continue to build on that in the case study. This is why Africa is important to scientists and science in general. And to undermine not knowing or understanding the argument of scientific literacy and evolution, that's a blow to understanding who we are today and why we're here in our existence. It may not mean that much to you, but it's a really, really big deal to the scientific field and everyone else around us. We're the only people that are illiterate on this said subject. And like Reggie said on the previous show, we're behind by 4 years on a lot of this stuff. All right. So the author says the result supports the idea that non-extinct hominids, afarensis, is probably the true ancestor of humans. Now, remember, afarensis is named after Africa or wherever they may have found afarensis at, right? So I had no doubt in mind, nor did many in our field, that Sediba could not have been the ancestor of Homo, not only because the earliest known representatives of Homo is 800,000 years older, but also because Sediba does not have all the morphological features that one would expect to see from the earliest Homo. Johannes Haile Selassie, a physical anthropologist from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History who was not involved in the new study, writes an email to Gizimodo. Let me stop right there. One of the most, Nature published the top 10 most influential people in science, okay? I'm gonna say this again. They published the top 10 most influential people in science. These are people that you need to know in science. And I think 3 of the people that was on that list were all from Africa. And Johannes Haile Selassie was one of the people. He's a physical anthropologist and he deals with the evidence. So if you're trying to introduce a field of study to someone and they're looking like, well, who are the so-called, let's use the racial construct, Black people that are in the field of study dealing with evolution, Johannes Haile Selassie is one. Now, in a particular jawbone of the oldest Homo fossil more closely resembles that of Afarensis jaw. The proposal that humans descended from the Sediba came from an analysis of 2 million-year-old fossils uncovered in South Africa in 2008. The species blend of human-like Australopithecus features, such as a small brain but a modern pelvic shape, led the study's author to conclude that Sediba likely gave rise to Homo. There has not been a universally accepted idea, partly because of fossils from Homo described in 2015 dates back to 2.8 million years ago. So we'll pause, we'll look up blend of human-like and Australopithecus features. We should come to this particular article by inverse.com. The article is titled exactly how it was there. I don't know if I'll get a strike for playing the video, but this video is from Sarah Sloth on January 23rd, 2019. And let's see if it'll play.
So 5 years ago, there was a really remarkable discovery in South Africa of a new species of early human called Australopithecus Sediba. There was an adult female that was discovered at this cave site, and her skeleton is remarkably complete. It's just a magnificent skeleton. And what we're learning from this species, among many other things, is that she walked in a very different way than most humans do today. And in fact, she walked in a different way than other Australopithecus species in the past walked. And it tells us that there were many different forms of bipedalism that evolved over the course of human evolution. That this typical progressional picture of human evolution of a chimpanzee-like animal evolving into a human-like animal in a linear fashion is simply wrong. That there were multiple ways of being an upright walker. And one of the ways that we know that is by studying humans today and the variation in which humans walk today. And one of the ways that some humans walk today is something called hyperpronation, where we have excessive twisting in of our foot and therefore our knee and our hip. And it even goes into the lower back as we walk. And it causes some real problems in humans, foot problems and knee problems and hip problems and back problems. And one of the magnificent things about this skeleton, and we're still studying this, we're still trying to figure this out, but what it appears to us is that this skeleton has anatomical solutions to the very problems that humans experience when they walk in this manner. And it suggests to us that this species was adapted for walking in this peculiar way. And it tells us that there are many different ways, again, to walk around the world in the past.
All right. So there you go. In 2008, a 9-year-old boy named Matthew Berger chased after his dog, Tau, near a site called the Cradle of Humankind in South Africa. As he ran past the Malapa pit, he tripped. Pausing to examine what caused the stumble, he called to his father, the paleontologist Lee Berger, who confirmed what Matthew suspected. The boy had tumbled over fossilized bones. A decade later, these fossils are challenging the traditional linear view of human evolution. By the way, Brother Ben went to the Cradle of Human Evolution, and that's the video we were talking about. So they in Africa doing all these studies, and we online arguing. Now, in a new analysis, Andrew Du and Zorisane Almazigid of the University of Chicago calculated the probability of finding a fossil from an ancestor that is 800,000 years younger than a fossil from the descendant. Based on the probable duration of each group's presence, the Earth, and the amount of time they may have overlapped, the team determined that it would happen 0.09% of the time. Our models show that the probability is next to zero, Dude says with a press release. Now, Afarensis, on the other hand, have been dated back to 3 million years and in close proximity to the oldest Homo fossil. Given the time and geography and morphology, these three pieces of evidence makes us think Afarensis a better candidate than Sediba, Murder says in the statement. All right, so Afarensis is a better candidate from that lineage line. Moving on. Third article from the scientists. All right. This article was published August 28th in 2019. And it's dealing with anamnesis. A human skull could recast our human family tree. Says researchers say the skull belongs to an Australopithecus species once thought to be a predecessor to Lucy, but now that relationship is murky. So let's see what they're talking about. Now, a rare discovery of an ancient hominid skull could lead researchers to redraw the human family tree. Archaeologists found a 3.8 million year old skull in Ethiopia, and they say it's from the species of Australopithecus anamnesis, long thought to be, a predecessor of Lucy afarensis, who is Australopithecus afarensis. Now, a feature of the newly discovered skull, however, suggests that the two species might have lived contemporaneously for at least 100,000 years in what is now Eastern Africa, according to two papers published today in the Journal of Nature. Boom. Here we go. We at the articles for the Journal of Nature. As you can see, it's a real long thing right here. The age and context of the mid-Pliocene hominid cranium from Ethiopia. I ain't gonna botch the name. Woranso Malay, Ethiopia. Now, the abstract tells us that a fossil hominid cranium has been discovered in mid-Pliocene deltaic strata in the Godea Valley in the northwestern Woranso Malay study area in Ethiopia. Here we show the analysis of chemically correlated volcanic layers of the paleomagnetic stratigraphy, combined with the Bayesian modeling of dated tuffs, yield an age range of 3.8 to 3.77 million years old for the deltaic strata and the fossils that they contain. Now, we also document deposits of a perennial lake beneath the deltaic sequence. Mammalian fossils associated with the cranium represents taxa that were widespread at the time, and data from botanical remains indicate that the vegetation in the lake and the delta catchment was predominantly dry shrubland with varying proportions of grassland, wetland, and riparian forest. There go that word, riparian. In addition, we report high rates of sediment accumulation and dispositional features that are typical of steep topographic relief and differ from young Woranso Malay fossils localities, reflecting the influence of active rift processes of the paleo landscape. So in this particular study, look, you can rent or buy the article for $8, or you can subscribe for 1 year for $200. It's only $3.88 per issue. And then it goes over the data collected, the references for the article, and then some additional information if you wanted to go there. So we're going to stay right there at the abstract. All right, we're going to go back into the article. Now, it says, I have no doubt that this specimen will become one of the iconic specimens in early human evolution. David Stratt, a paleontologist at Washington University in St. Louis, who was not involved in the work, tells the Washington Post. The team's assessment at Australopithecus Sediba might not have been a predecessor of Lucy, but a contemporary is an interesting idea he notes in the Nature story. All right. So click on that article and we can read this one. It says, in ancient faces shedding the light on the earliest ancestors, archaeologists have discovered a 3.8 million old hominid skull in Ethiopia, a rare and remarkable complete specimen that could change what we know about the origins of humanity's most famous ancestor, Lucy. The researchers who discovered the skull, it belongs to a species called Australopithecus Sediba, and it gives scientists their first good look at the face of this hominid. This species was thought to precede Lucy's specimen, Australopithecus afarensis. But features of the latest find now suggest that Sediba shared the prehistoric Ethiopian landscape with Lucy species for at least 100,000 years, the researchers say. This hints that the early hominid evolutionary tree was more complicated than scientists had thought, but other researchers say that the evidence isn't yet conclusive. Fossil hominid crania are exceptionally rare treasures, says Carol Ward, a paleoanthropologist at the University of Missouri in Columbia, who wasn't involved in the analysis. Notice how they keep on saying wasn't involved. So they're clearly telling you that these people had nothing to do with the findings or anything like that. So there can't be some type of persuasion going on. Now, this to me is the specimen we have been waiting for, an analysis of the skull published in Nature. Now, exceptionally preserved, afarensis lived in East Africa between 4 million to 3 million years ago. It is important to understanding of human evolution because it might have been the ape-like species from which the true human genus Homo evolved about 2.8 million years ago. And over the past few decades, researchers have discovered dozens of fragments of Australopithecine fossils in Ethiopia and Kenya that date back more than 4 million years ago. Most researchers think the older fossils belong to the earliest species, Anamesis. It's generally thought that Anamesis gradually morphed into Afarensis, implying that the two species never coexisted. Now, the 3.8 million year old hominid skull discovered at the site of Owaransis Mill in Ethiopia now suggests otherwise. A team of paleoanthropologists led by, once again, the African, look him up, Johannes Haile Selassie at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History in Ohio discovered the specimen called the MRD cranium in 2016. Features of the fossil's teeth and jaw suggest that it belongs to an Anamesis. That's an important conclusion because until now, researchers have found only a few fragments of Anamesis skull. The preservation of the specimen really is an exceptional, says Stephanie Milana, a paleoanthropologist at the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology in Germany, Leipzig, Germany, who was involved in the latest works. Now, the skull was found in just 2 large species, which says is unfathomably unlikely for a specimen of this age. We just got really lucky with this find. The species of the famous fossil Lucy, afarensis. Coexistence. The find makes it possible to reassess other facial fossils, including the 3.9 million year old forehead fragment found in Ethiopia in the 80s. Until now, it wasn't clear whether this fragment belonged to an afarensis or Anamesis. But now the researchers have been able to show that the fragment has features that are seen in the younger afarensis skull, but are absent in the MRD cranium. Assuming the forehead fragment belonged to an afarensis individual, the MRD cranium to an Anamesis individual, the researchers suggest that the two species may have coexisted in the region for more than 100,000 years or more. Now, Selassie and his colleagues say it's still likely that Lucy species evolved from Anamesis, but they think it did so through a speciation event. If you're unfamiliar with speciation, there's a show on that on the Amarai Squad as well. Perhaps a small group of animiscids became genetically isolated from a general population and evolved into an afarensis, which eventually outcompeted with the wider animiscids population. Now, Melillo admits that arguing for a local speciation event rather than a gradual transformation of the entire population might seem like splitting hairs. But she says that understanding exactly how hominid species evolved is a crucial first step in unraveling why they evolved the way they did. Some researchers are ready to consider the possibility that afarensis and animiscids coexisted. It is a very interesting claim, says David Strait, a paleoanthropologist at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. But both Strait and Ward think the evidence isn't conclusive yet because it rests heavily on just two fossils, the MRD cranium and the forehead fragment discovered in the 80s. Strait thinks future fossil finds might help to firm up the idea. I'm rocking with him on that. Then the hominid neighbors. Tim White, a paleoanthropologist at the University of Cal Berkeley, thinks that with such limited evidence, it's far too soon to revise our understanding of Lucy's origins. But he says that it is becoming more common for researchers to argue that there were two or more hominid species coexisting at any given point over the past several million years. Selassie thinks that multiple hominid species did coexist between 3 to 4 million years ago, and not just because the MRD craniums in 2012, he and his colleagues described as 3.4 million year old fossil foot from once a male with an opposable big toe. That's a feature not seen in the hominids known to be alive at the time, implying that the foot belonged to a mysterious but distinct species that shared the landscape. The discoveries from the mill site have clearly demonstrated to me that there were multiple early hominid species, he says. He meaning Selassie. All right. So, when we're critiquing any work, man, we want to try to use a methodology that would be sound. We want to try to get to the original journal, which always, that's why Unc always says it always comes back to the Journal of Nature, because the best work will be, written in the Journal of Nature, and we'll have access to that, and we'll be able to vet a lot of the information out of it, but we will also be able to see the method that was used in order to determine the dating and all of these things that have to do with everything that they got going on, right? So this article led to three other articles that I read. Probably would have been 4 if I would have clicked on the Salawasi, which I don't think was relevant for this time. Then I transcended from that article to this article and further understanding what was going on in science, because the date moved up a month later. And I wanted to understand the likelihood for the human ancestors. That led to 2 additional articles. And then I went to a third article from the same site. Now notice I use the main articles are all from the same site, but they led me to other places where I can obtain more information about what was actually written or published in that particular article. Then the last article took me to, I didn't want to pull up the Washington Post, but I pulled up the Nature articles. And then, hold on. I ain't pull this up. Oh, yeah. This one was for the other one. So I'm cool on that one because it's inside this source, but I didn't pull this one up, which was the last one with the last article, which will go here. Now I pull this up, this gonna give me this. And some of y'all in the chat look just like this dude right here. Straight up, just like this dude. Kyle crazy. So then we would just basically go over this article. As we can see, this article is linked to that article. They're both written at the same time. So we know that the primary article that was published first was inside of here, or really inside of Nature. But these 2 other sites also published it as well. We can kind of get down to break down all of this. And then this should identify what we read in the other article, and it does. And then we move on from there. Archaeology, evolution. So I'm not making an argument for Unc. Science is making an argument for Unc. One of the reasons why we need to be scientifically literate, but also understand the arguments and quit being so far behind in these particular arguments. So in one setting, I can read one article that'll send me to 4 other articles or 12 other articles, and I would have to review all of that. And in proper context, if there's words or things I do not understand, I need to pull those words out, look them up, and get a better understanding of those words. Hopefully today's lesson was pretty cool. This is basically how I review literature again. But I wanted to just give it to you, not just from a book source, but from the article source. So when you're looking at an article and you reading something and somebody give you a source on something, go behind them and then get to the bottom of it. Because I guarantee you that they're not going to read article 1, 2, and 3 to get back to there. They're going to give you this article or something that's similar to what they're arguing about and stay right there. Meanwhile, you've went further than they did in the research to actually come back to it, which you will have more information than they had on it. Because that's how some people just like to really argue online, is that they hit you with these quick fix links and bullet point research that they do. And then that's how they argue their points. But I'm not going to hold y'all up today. It's 7. It's 6 my time. From my understanding, there's a conversation that will be held at 7:30 on another platform. Many of you may partake in that silliness. However, Godspeed to y'all. I'm gonna end the stream, man, by saying Shimon Hotep. Go back and listen to your ancestors. John G. Jackson. He talked about evolution. Sheikh Antijoke talked about evolution. Dr. Ben talked about evolution. Dr. Clark really wasn't into it that heavy, but there is instances where he did make mention of a few things, I think, in some lectures. Not in any of his written work, but lecture-wise, I think. Excuse me. And Africans in the diaspora have made great advances in understanding. So when they be like, man, we ain't got nobody in that particular field of study, we actually do. I just gave you a name of one. There's 3 others that you can go look at and find out that, there's other Africans on the continent that are in that field of study and who are advancing this whole understanding of things. So when people try to just limit certain people to Charles Darwin, we're not limited to Charles Darwin. In other discoveries in Africa, dealing with where do we actually come from, how did we get here, we understand, period, that it is imperative that we be scientifically literate and we advance knowledge. So on that note, I'm gonna say Shalom Hotep, peace to the chat, peace to the peanut gallery. Y'all go enjoy yourselves, man. I'm gonna watch me a movie.